Good. It's Wednesday. I wanted to make it January for some reason, but it's not. Um, February 10th at 2 p.m. And we are having the Community Reinvestment Advisory Subcommittee meeting. I want to thank my members for attending. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Call the roll, Ms. Stevens.
Present.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is absent at the moment. Ms. Blackwell.
Present.
Ms. Wheeler.
Present.
Ms. George. Ms. George is absent at the moment. Mr. McDermott.
Here I am.
Ms. Anderson.
I think she's muted, but I see her face.
Thank you. I see her. She's muted. Mr. Zone.
I was muted. I'm sorry. I am here.
Thank you. Mr. Zone.
Present.
Mr. Benjamin.
Here.
Mr. Sarin.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Today, we have with us guests from KeyBank. As we originally structured this committee, it was an outgrowth of having negotiated an agreement through the Treasurer's Office with KeyBank to provide us with Treasury services as a county organization. Key provided us comprehensively with the best services, but along the way, based on some activism by some of the people on the phone today, and some folks who are not represented here, we grew the agreement into additional commitment by KeyBank to work with us and residents of our county. So with nothing further on my part, Mr. Carter, are you, I'm sorry, yes, Ash. Oh, did I forget to do the minutes?
The public comment, there was no public comment submitted, and also, yes, we need to approve the minutes.
Okay, so before we move any further, before I introduce staff, there were minutes that were forwarded to everyone on Monday afternoon. Did anyone get a chance to check them, or did everyone? And are they approvable? If you believe they're approvable, I'll accept a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the minutes. This is Khalil.
I'll
Is there a
second. This is
second?
Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Zone is a second. Is there, with no further objections, everyone in favor of approval? Aye.
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 Any nays? Hearing no nays, the minutes are approved. Thank you, Ashley, for reminding me. I'm asking Mr. Carter, I don't see Mr. Murray. Do you see him today?
He's on furlough this week. Excuse me. What?
Okay. Oh,
I'm sorry. Somebody's knocking on the conference room door.
okay. So if you would introduce the staff from KeyBank who will be interacting with us on occasion on this. And I believe there's a short presentation.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Good afternoon. Ted Carter, Chief Economic Development and Business Officer for Cuyahoga County. Today, we're going to be receiving a presentation from Eric Fiala, who is the head of corporate responsibility for KeyBank and oversees the community dimension of our relationship with KeyBank and his team. The executive and I had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Fiala and his team to go through
Ted, you're on mute.
Ted, you muted.
Okay. What is that noise? He's still muted.
so you didn't hear any of that, Madam Chair? Hello?
We can hear you now, Ted. Well, yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, you can hear.
Now we can hear you.
Okay.
I had muted myself.
Okay, apologies. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Ted Carter, Chief Economic Development and Business Officer for Cuyahoga County. Good afternoon. Pleased today to present Mr. Eric Fiala, Head of Corporate Responsibility for KeyBank, for his presentation to walk through KeyBank's commitments around mortgage lending to Cuyahoga County. Executive Budish and I had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Fiala and his team late last week, and came away with a firm sense of their commitment and progress on many of the commitments, recognizing that there's further work to be done, which you'll hear from Mr. Fiala and his team directly. And so this is an important priority for my office, and we are committed to working with Key to implement some of these recommendations, and had a chance to meet with the chair briefly around one dimension of their commitment that I think we're going to engage this committee around. But with that, Mr. Fiala, would you introduce yourself and your team, please, to the committee? And thank you for making time to update the committee on your progress.
Great, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here. I'm Eric Fiala, the head of corporate responsibility at Key Bank. With me today from my team, before I dive into some of the updates, I wanted to share with you and introduce you to Chanel Smith. Chanel leads our community relations team and is playing a part in overseeing this work for us, as well as Amanda Petrak, who is our local corporate responsibility officer for Northeast Ohio, and is running point on a day-to-day basis on our execution of these commitments. So I'm happy to have them here with me today. In terms of the update, we weren't able to attend the last meeting, but of this committee, so we did have a chance to watch the discussion and digest it, and appreciate the committee's perspectives on the priorities within those 13 commitments that were made. And so today, I think we can talk about, those that we've completed, those that we still have outstanding and are working towards. But I thought it would be most helpful for us to start with those 3 priorities that we heard out of the last meeting. And those were expansion of the Challenge Loan Fund, the loan loss guarantee for appraisals of $50,000 or less, and then loan application data were the priorities we took away from this group based on your last meeting. So I mentioned that Amanda has been running point on some of the day-to-day efforts around our commitments, and so I'm going to turn it over to her to give the highlights on where we are specifically with the Challenge Loan Program expansion. Amanda?
Hold on just a second, Amanda. This is Cheryl Stevens, chair of the committee. Thank you, Eric, for your focusing in on our 3 priorities. I thought I would have to tell you what they were. You did your homework. I also want to recognize my colleague who's president of County Council, Pernell Jones, has joined us. So this is the work that you're doing is a priority for leadership of the council. Go ahead, Amanda.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you all today. Thanks for having us part of this subcommittee meeting. Regarding the Challenge Loan Fund, we've been in ongoing conversations with the Home Repair Resource Center since the commitments were made, including as recently as a couple of weeks ago, to get an understanding of the current state and the next steps. HRRC will require additional staff capacity to expand, given how robust their program is, and with the homeowners education and certifying contractors and the following up on all of the repairs. They are working currently to identify specific zip codes where they think it's reasonable to slowly expand the program over time. Internally, we're working to evaluate opportunities to reduce the required guarantee, which would inevitably increase the lending capacity that HRRC has. Once we have that path forward, our plan is to engage with the branch employees to make sure that the designated expansion areas will also have training on the product so that they can make sure that they're communicating to our clients the opportunity to use the Challenge Loan Fund. One thing of note is given that we underwrite the loans in this program, the additional funding sources will have to be identified for the expansion, giving our self-dealing rules.
Amanda, is any of this in the presentation that you sent over to us earlier?
Yes, I believe it is.
Can I open that up and you can tell me which page to go to?
I believe Eric sent it to you, so.
Madam
Yes,
Chair,
can you
maybe if
see
you go
it
to
now?
page 5, I would go to page 5 of that document.
Just because people, if they see and hear things, can you see it now, Matt?
Yeah, but can you blow it up full screen and go to page 5? And I do have a question if you'd allow me at the appropriate time.
Yep, let me try and do that.
I'd add, this is Chanel, I'd add that on page 5, it says that we met with them on November 11th. I just want to remind the committee that we met with them as early as a couple weeks ago. And so this slide deck hasn't been updated to reflect our most recent meeting and conversation with CHN and Keisha.
So I don't do this for a living, so obviously I'm not as fast as maybe one of my staff may have been.
Could I ask my question now, Madam Chairwoman?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Sure. Thank you, Amanda, for that discussion around the Challenge Loan Program. Can you share or expand upon how will you prioritize certain zip codes? What's your strategy around prioritizing certain zip codes in our county?
We have really been working with Keisha Allen at HRRC to determine what their capacity is. She, on the last call that I had with her, she originally said that there were some strong relationships that she had with a few of the CDCs in the area. But based on the capacity issue, she's not sure how quickly and how many zip codes she could do right away, but knows that over time and over this, the length of this agreement, that she hopes to continually expand the capacity to do so in each of the zip codes. But obviously we're open to feedback and discussion about which zip codes are priority. Mr. Carter said in our last meeting with the county that he was interested in zip codes that were in the opportunity zones, but if anybody else has anything to add to that, we'd be open to listening and to discussing it.
Well, I don't think it should, just a follow up, Madam Chair, and I'll back down then. Separate from the opportunity quarter, which I think is okay, I would be more interested on expanding this type of program in communities that historically have not had access to capital. And so separate from working with your CDC partners, I'd really like you to work with the county council and maybe target a couple of the county council districts where really that disinvestment hasn't been happening. And so I have some thoughts about how you can do it. I'll reserve that for a later conversation and really leave that up to Chairwoman Stevens and Council President Jones and staff Khalil Sarin on how you go about sharing this opportunity.
Because this is a county-wide endeavor with the county as part of the dialogue, it's incredibly important to me that we have things go on outside of the city of Cleveland proper. We never want to ignore the city, but I've got 3 suburban mayors on this committee. So at a minimum, we're going to need to talk about Lakewood, Maple Heights, and South Euclid. Did I do that in alphabetical order? That's really what we need to be able to do.
To the chair, this is Chanel again. We did, as part of our conversation that we had with Mr. Carter and Executive Budish, we did talk about those 3 communities, and we also received a letter from those 3 mayors. And I think we want to be able to do this in partnership with County Council, those mayors, and also with Keisha, and understand how we can really expand their capacity to do these work in the communities outside of where they are right now.
Okay, does the challenge grant only work with HRRC, or could it work with some of our other nonprofits?
It's currently structured to work strictly with HRRC. The current program is only in Cleveland Heights, and the idea was to expand it. But again, the capacity issue, both from a human capital issue and financially, is a barrier.
Well, as you know, in my previous lives, I've worked with HRC, so I do understand that they don't have the ability to immediately serve 5 other cities. So that I did understand. Are you willing to help underwrite some of their growth costs?
The challenge with underwriting,
I think
go ahead,
that-
Eric. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's something we can and will consider. The piece we have to make sure we are aligned on is who's doing the underwriting for those loans. Today, we actually underwrite the loans through the HRRC, and because of self-dealing, we do have to be careful of funding a program where there's benefit back to us from an underwriting perspective. So those are details we would absolutely have to work through. The other thing I was going to add was that my sense is that, on the capacity issue, today it is a program through the HRRC, but I think Keisha has been very open to thinking about alternatives and other partners that we could bring into the delivery to be able to expand the program. And I know has already had some initial conversations with other partners.
Sally or Mayor Wheelo, did you have some conversations with HRRC about their expansion?
Sally, go.
Would you like me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we've been talking to HRRC for 13 years about launching a challenge loan program in South Euclid. And initially, when the GCRC was putting forward this idea of the challenge loan expansion, which was a super large priority for all of us, the idea was to bring in all of the different housing counseling agencies that have the capacity throughout the urban county. The idea is that would be the way to phase in an expansion versus just one agency. So hopefully there'll be enough money to help grow the capacity there. Otherwise, I'm afraid this could falter.
So that's one of the reasons why the committee's here, Eric. Having in that 13 years myself been boots on the ground in Cleveland Heights, I know that HRC's budget is tight for operational purposes. So a growth opportunity is something I believe, without having conversations with their board or executive staff, they're interested in. It's just hard to grow when you don't have any additional cash flow specifically designated with that growth. So Sally and Mayor Wheelo's ideas about helping grow this umbrella group may be something that we would love for you to look at. Is that phrasing it correctly, Georgine?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when you look at all these, data, and, we don't have to look far, and it's across the board, the east side of Cleveland was hit hard, and the east suburbs were hit hard. So, it's really critical that there's some kind of expansion. This is the opportunity for it, and there's no greater time, especially now that what's happening with the pandemic, and you look at the 90-day, 60-day, and 90-day delinquencies. It's really time that we start putting some investment into the east side. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for accommodating our questions. You can move on now.
Actually,
Okay.
Madam Chair, I had a question, if I may.
Certainly.
Thank you. I just wanted to understand to our KeyBank friends. I wanted to understand, and you could certainly follow up on this, in my opinion, but what the actual need is in regard to loan loss reserve, and so that we can all think about how to be helpful, I suppose, on what if there's incremental growth, what that incremental need is. Yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
Sure. Mark, thanks for the question. I think it's an important one. And I also think there are a couple of levers there that we are seeing as opportunities. So certainly there are, I think of this as really having a couple of components. One is funding the loan loss, but then the other is, funding the operating costs. From a loan loss perspective, I know an issue that was shared with us, very early on was around the level of guarantee required on these loans. Today, there is capacity within the existing portfolio to do more lending. That said, one of the things we're working on is looking at the guarantee for those loans and evaluating opportunities to reduce that, because purely by reducing that level of guarantee required, we can, generate additional loans within the existing pool of resources we have. So that is, high priority. I think all the things we talked about are kind of very much priorities from an external perspective, but internally and what we have kind of at our fingertips today, that's really where we're focused, is changing the guarantee so we can increase that capacity of the existing program even.
Does that answer your question, Mark? Thank you. Okay, Eric and Amanda, back to you guys.
Thank you. So the second priority around the loan loss guarantee for appraisals of $50,000 or less. So this is one we still have in progress. We wouldn't consider this complete by any means. I think one of the options, and this is number one there on the screen. Yeah, I think if they're in order of the commitments, that's on page 4. Maybe page 5. Sorry, that's one still on. There we go. So towards the middle of the page. So today, our P community mortgage product can be used for loans under $50,000. That said, I know that's not the core issue that we have. In terms of the loan loss guarantee, one of the things we're starting to explore is programs that have been done in other cities across the country that have really brought together a collaboration of different partners to help close this gap. So this is one, again, I think we've moved up on our list given the conversation that was had at the last meeting, and are really looking externally at models that can help solve this issue.
Anyone else before?
Madam Chair, this is Frank Ford. Can I
Yes.
raise something?
Yes.
It's something that I think I've raised at previous meetings, but this question of loans, access to loans 50,000 and less, which is impacting the east side of Cleveland and many of the east inner suburbs, because you could have a home selling for 40,000. It's actually a decent home, but because the market has been so undermined over the last 10 years because of foreclosure and abandonment, that there's difficulty. But the difficulty is, I think, misstated if we only view it through the lens of saying when a home doesn't appraise. That is a factor, but you could have a home 40,000, the sales 40,000, it does appraise. But the two other issues that are mentioned elsewhere in the document are not connected to this. And I think we've got to just give some thought to, when we're talking about the issue of loans 50,000 or less, we should tie all three issues together. The other two being loan officers' compensation, because loan officers are human nature. They're going to want to do loans for 300,000 out in the suburbs, the outer suburbs. They're not going to want to do a loan at 40,000. And Key does address this, although it's a little vague still what's in there. And the third is when fees on a $40,000 loan, transaction fees may be disproportionately high, putting that loan into a high cost category. And I see that's addressed elsewhere too, but I'm just suggesting that somehow we tie these together so we don't lose the significance of the overall picture of the problem with access to loans 50,000 and less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. I think that's great feedback, and I completely agree. So I think the appraisal issue is a distinct issue. That's the one when I speak about us looking at different models across the country where we're focused on learning more. But your points on mortgage originator comp I can jump to that one quickly. So in 2020, and it would be on, I think page 3 of the materials, we did adjust mortgage originator compensation in 2020. You'll, I think, know that we have both traditional mortgage officers as well as community development loan originators. And we adjusted compensation plans for both populations of sales roles. For all of our mortgage originators, so not specifically focused on just the community development ones, we implemented essentially a kicker for low and moderate income mortgages that is based on units, not on volume. So in many cases, we find that some of our traditional loan officers are producing at levels at or above the community development originators. And so we wanted to make sure they were motivated, to achieve that next level of production. And we're being rewarded for eligible loans. For the community development mortgage originators, the big change there was a shift in the mix of fixed versus variable comp. So said differently, base pay versus sales incentives. For the community development loan officers, salaries were reduced, and the variable pay as a percentage of overall pay was increased. And again, that is purely based on units, the sales incentive, not on the dollar volume of the mortgages. So we're not disincenting, if you will, for lower sized loans.
Eric, Madam Chair, could I ask Eric a follow-up?
Yes.
So I believe, I don't remember which bank it is. It could be Key, it could be Huntington. One of them did something where they said loan officers who make a loan, and again, I'll use 40,000 as the example, will be compensated at a minimum level as though the loan were, I think it may have been a threshold of 100 or 120,000. Do you do something like that? Or are you familiar with what I'm referring to?
So I'm familiar. I think that methodology is really built into the per unit pay to make sure that loans of $40,000 are comparable from a payment perspective to some higher balance loans.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there was one other. We talked about the application process and making it easier for people to, I think that was our third bullet, perspectives from you as the lender.
So the third priority that I had noted was around providing the loan application data.
Yes.
Okay. So that loan application data, we are required to file it by March 1st. So anytime following March 1st, we would be able to, provide that detail.
Madam Chair, could I ask another follow-up?
But of course.
Okay. So a couple things here. One is that in the PowerPoint, we do have on the left side, what is the commitment? And the commitment was, we'll provide the data prior to the data being published. And then on the right-hand side, it says, how has Key delivered? But on the right-hand side, it just is projected out as a future action. We will provide it. Can I suggest that at least on one point here, this not be in the category of it's already done, because it isn't done. It'd be one thing if the right-hand said, for example, KeyBank has provided the 2020 loan application register data as of today. I'm sure that you're going to do it, but I don't think it really belongs into the has delivered category. That's one question or a point. The second is that it is due, as you said, it's due to the federal regulators by March 1st. And then the federal regulators don't typically publish it until maybe August. It would be helpful if there was more specificity as to when might you release it. And I think there's nothing that would prevent you. I don't think the federal regulators would prevent you from, for example, the 2020 loan application register. You might have it even in draft form. I'm thinking you probably could give it to the county with some caveat that it's in draft form, so it could be reviewed even before March 1st. So there's 2 points I was raising. One is I don't think this belongs in this category yet.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. So thank you for the feedback, and we can make that adjustment. From just a data quality perspective, I think we are well served to wait until we finalize for that submission on March 1st. But anytime after that, and I completely agree. I think that's the essence of this commitment, is trying to get ahead of that, but trying to solve for that lag between when it's submitted and when it's actually published. But once it's submitted, we can provide it, following that March 1st deadline.
Very good. Thank you.
One of the things I was blurring together, Eric, is that typically we want the data, but in order to get to participate in programs, applications are sometimes a barrier to entry. And how will Key work with HRRC or our communities or whatever mechanism we finally use to try and provide access to as many people as possible? How will we try to make those barriers more user-friendly? In the day of online everything, have you tried, what are you doing to see if we can make the access more open and more user-friendly?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, and we can follow up on this one. I'd be happy to. I'm not sure how much flexibility we have in the mortgage application process from a regulatory perspective. The one piece here that I think certainly could play a role there, and we can think about how to include it or build it into this, is really around the commitment number 13 on financial literacy and education. I know Amanda was just named, I failed to mention this, mid last year as the CRO and Corporate Responsibility Officer in Cleveland. And I know she is really focused on thinking through ways to do better outreach to communities so that we are helping them along this continuum of financial services and making it easier for them to bank at Key. But I think specific to mortgage applications, that's one Chanel and Amanda we should take a note of and bring back.
Sometimes it's as simple as using a larger font on the application form or on the window screen that you go to online. When it's harder for people whose eyes are aging or maturing, and as you've all noticed, I have glasses on, and that maturation process has begun to catch up with me. And so sometimes when things are small, the smaller the font, the more likely I am not to want to read it or to say it's too difficult. And so that actually doesn't affect the regulators. It's a way to make things more user-friendly. To my colleagues, other questions? Mayor Blackwell?
That was quick. You saw me click the button. Thank you.
I have my eye on you.
Nice to meet everyone. And I'm actually going to come from a different perspective because I spent years in banking and I actually worked at Key Bank for many years. So I want to tell you that we've been having these discussions in different groups with mayors and individual cities, several presentations about everything that you have included in this document today. And I want to say thank you. Key Bank did not feel like it was a bank for everyone. There was almost like an elitism. And what I'm seeing today as I reviewed this document are things that I understand that you've been listening. there's a key bank right at Southgate in the middle of my city on Marshall Center Road. And I've been in there and there just really hasn't been a receptivity and people are just kind of processed. And so you're seeing words like low cost check cashing. You see, like Maple Heights, we've had the issue with check cashing places at individual stores, and expanding affordable mortgage. I can't tell you how happy I am to see the things that you've completed. Great job. It feels good not to spend an hour in a meeting talking about the same things over and over again of what we should do, what we could do, what we will do, but I'm looking at it's done. When I see the word completed, it's done. And for me, this is a good use of time. And I sit here believing that our residents in the city of Maple Heights are going to have what they need. And that bank that sits at Southgate is going to make sure that they're aware of the help programs. Small businesses, which are the backbone of this community, we're a bedroom community, SBA loans, you know, taking a look at those that have been denied and then seeing if you can make them, because we were one of the cities, a recipient of some of the SBA money, reducing loan transaction fees. So, I mean, these are things, appraisal standards adjustment. I mean, this is huge. For the deal that falls through, that I have realtors in my office saying, well, you know, the comps and everything is so low. You've hit on everything that a community bank should be, a bank that sits in a city like Maple Heights, and there are many Maple Heights all over this country. A few even in the 59 communities in Cuyahoga County. So for all that we can say that isn't done or should be done, and I'm speaking for me, because I come from banking. I worked at Key Bank. I'm sitting in this seat. I've sat in these meetings way too long. I just kind of gloss over and like, oh my God, here we go again. It doesn't sound like we're just talking anymore. So to Eric, Chanel, and Amanda, it looks like you've heard us. You took the time to go back and take a look at what we talked about in this community, and you've done the work. Even what is commitments in progress, what I've seen is completed gives me a great deal of optimism and just a strong belief that you will continue to get these other things done. So thank you for your presentation today. Thank you for this document that clearly identifies that you've heard us, you get it. And I do believe that will become a bank for everyone and not just the elitism that you can sometimes feel when you go into this bank. Thank you.
Sure. And I would say thank you for those comments. And I'm happy that that's the sense that you're coming away with, because we are committed to delivering on these commitments. And I think, you know, this committee is helping us do that in a way that will really be beneficial to the communities that need it most. We don't have all the answers, but I think the insight and the wisdom from those on the phone and those that we talk to in communities where we look at other cities and their models, other organizations and their models, is helping us figure out the best way to bring some of these commitments to life. So your sense is my sense that we are committed, and we'll continue to move these forward. So thank you.
I want to make sure that we ask every question that our committee has. Is there anyone who would like to speak up at this point in time? Oh, Mr. Sarin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I wanted to say I thought I saw Sally Martin's hand up in the participants list as well. So, and I think her hand up was before mine. So if she wants to go first, I don't want to jump the line.
Sally, I'm sorry. I had shrunk my screen, so I did not see the raised hand.
Oh, no, that's entirely okay. And in fact, I just failed to lower my hand because I had wanted to make some comments about the challenge loan expansion. So I'm actually fine. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Benjamin, I now see your hand now that I've expanded my screen.
Oh, should I not go now then?
I'm sorry.
Okay, it's all right. I'm sorry about that. I did want to ask a quick question. Well, first, I also wanted to echo the compliments. I appreciate everything that Key is doing to cooperate with us and work toward making a better banking community in the region. So I appreciate the work that you all are doing. And I wanted to know, with the appraisal standards adjustment work that's going to be done, part of the county's housing program has to do with comp creation and working to move the needle on the comps that we use for our various appraisals for home improvement loans or mortgages. And I'm wondering if there's any room for Key, maybe even other banks, to work with the land bank on the work that they're doing to try to improve comps by strategically renovating homes, getting them sold. If there's any room to combine these two approaches. More of a targeting kind of thing too, I guess.
Yeah, I think absolutely we can think through that.
Thank you.
Gary?
I just wanted to raise the issue of the community reinvest or the community development corporation that's in here. I think it's page 5. Do you have any kind of time frame on when we'll get that finalized?
Are you talking CDFI?
Yes, sorry.
Absolutely. Amanda, I know you have been running point in some of the conversations with CHN. Do you want to provide an update on that one?
Sure. So we have been, for those of you on the call that don't know, we have been a longtime supporter and partner of CHN Housing Partners, both from a philanthropic standpoint and a business standpoint. We are supporters of the financial capabilities programming and the sustainability of it. And in all, the KeyBank Foundation has historically provided more than $1.3 million in philanthropic support. We've been in several conversations with CHN Housing Partners and with Kevin Nowak, and most recently about 2 weeks ago, about the opportunities to expand our relationships, including the CDFI, but also other opportunities that CHN may find even more impactful.
Is it possible that if CHN becomes a CDFI, that they could expand the ability to deliver more opportunities with the challenge loan program? There's some reference to it. You see CHN under the progress conversations from
Right.
last year. Have you had more conversations with them using the CDFI to act in similar ways, or use an instrument, a loan instrument like the challenge loan? Because most of us don't care what it's called as long as it does what it needs to do.
Yes, in early conversations, I would say maybe this summer, that was Keisha's idea, because of the capacity issues that I referenced earlier, that potentially CHN Housing Partners, she didn't say specifically the CDFI, but CHN Housing Partners could help them with their capacity issues, and potentially underwrite some of the loans and do some of the administrative processing of the loans. But specifically, we didn't speak about the CDFI, and it's certainly something that we can continue to explore. Kevin was concerned about his capacity issues and the administrative costs of the position that they wanted CHN to play in processing the loans.
Well, at least we know there's some options and that you're exploring them. And so since all of us know Kevin, we'll just have to work on him too. Other questions? Of concern to many of us are the appraisal standards and techniques that are used. Because that is so significant in how you can lend. It's a primary principle that every lender has with it's part of your underwriting. Is there an appraisal on this property? I mean, that's just on the basic core checklist. I have asked staff, where are you, Mr. Nani, to begin a conversation. We know that in Ohio, the Department of Commerce supervises the appraisers. So this week, Mr. Nani did some beginning homework, and the committee will later be asked to dialogue about how we want to approach this. Joe, what did you find out?
Well, I sent you the requirements for appraisers along with the application process. You had asked me to look in to see if there could be someone from that agency to speak and to answer any questions that this committee may have at a future meeting. And if I have not reached out to her yet, her name is Ann Pettit. She's the superintendent of real estate. And if you guys present, you know, the type of information that you would like presented at a future meeting, I can certainly make that request of her, either her directly or someone on her staff to attend a future meeting.
So before we basically say anything to Key about how they handle their appraisals, my thought is that we talk to the folks at the state of Ohio who make the decisions about appraisals and who can be certain type of appraiser. We take a look at what kinds of things we can affect. And so I'm just putting that out there for you to think about. As we roll toward the end of our agenda, I see that we're 3/4 of the way through an hour. I'm going to want you guys to weigh in on those kinds of things. Eric, I'm going to ask you to wrap up your presentation.
Madam Chair.
So that we can move. I'm sorry, yes?
Can I comment on the appraisal standards adjustment? May I ask a question?
Yes.
Before we wrap up. I see the appraisal standards adjustment number 3. There's an adjustment for additional opportunities for LMI borrowers. So usually there's 3 approaches to appraisal. There's, you know, of course, the sales comparison. Probably won't have the income. We probably won't have, I don't know if we'll have the cost approach for new construction. So is this, which appraisal standards are we looking at as far as approaches to value?
So I don't know that we're looking exclusively at one approach.
Okay.
I think that's a conversation.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
That we as a advice request, as opposed to appraisals need to be adjusted. So we, if all of us can get to the same page, then we can have a better ask of the state and therefore a better recommendation to lenders in our marketplace. That's all that's about, because if they tell us federal law has said that appraisers need to do so and so, then we know we need to talk with our congressional delegation as opposed to the state. We also will learn what the bank can and cannot do, or what the appraiser can and cannot do. And there are differing things that, I mean, a bank has to be willing to accept the appraiser. When we're buying a house, I can't just call the first appraiser, AAA appraisals in the phone book. You need to be on the bank's approved list. If that's the case, what can we encourage or request from the state that appraisers begin to do in urban and rural locations where we have problems with comps and income and values? So I want us to have a conversation about it, but I didn't want to go off in a direction that none of you guys wanted me to go. I wanted some input from you before I had staff do more than who's in charge, what's the range of their responsibility, and are we in favor of that being one of our next conversations?
Madam Chair. Oh, I'm sorry. You finish.
No, go ahead, Frank.
I know we're short on time, but there are two other items in the presentation, and maybe we don't explore them, but could I just get them on the record as two things that for future
Yes.
discussion? Okay, so one is the SBA loans, and this is admittedly not an area of that I'm working on, but I did notice that in the what has been delivered, it's reasonable perhaps that the shift went from SBA small loans to COVID-19 PPP, but it still might be useful to know of the 316 million that they did provide in loans, if we look back at the commitment, what portion of those were to small businesses, LMI, and to what extent did that help them meet the goal that they actually set of a 20% increase? It just would be helpful to know that. And maybe the answer doesn't have to be given today. Do you want me to do the second one just to get it out there?
Yes, please.
The second one is the very last one, the loan transaction fees, which goes back to the same issue I mentioned earlier about there being three issues related to loans 50,000 or less. And one of them is that sometimes like a $40,000 loan, if it has the standard fees that might be on that loan, that might appear, wouldn't make an $200,000 loan a high cost loan, but it might make a $40,000 loan get bumped into the high cost category. The deliverable only talks about they've addressed interest. They don't mention fees. And I'm wondering, could fees still bump a loan into high cost? Again, maybe something for future discussion. I just want to get it on the record.
Eric, do you have a quick answer, or do we need to, can we get an email from you on it? You're muted.
Eric. Oh.
So on SBA loans, I'm going to double check my number here, but the percentage of small business lending to businesses located in LMI communities for PPP in the first round, so not the round that's happening now, was I think $46 million. So we did surpass that. The objective we had was increasing the 22 million. On the loan transaction fee, so I do want to call out that credit of $1,000 is on the transaction fee that goes towards closing costs. But I think we can come back with an additional discussion on the closing cost fees and your valid points around what could go into high cost.
Yeah, that's valid answers, and you want to give yourself full credit for what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
I would just like to add one thing as it relates to the PPP loans. And I think it might be one of the more unique approaches, but we have engaged all of our corporate responsibility offices across our footprint, including Cleveland, myself, to proactively reach out to community organizations, CDCs, business chambers, and others to ensure that the small and minority owned and women owned businesses, specifically in LMI communities, have access to these funds and feel supported in the navigation process. So I've been directly tagged to a banker who is administering PPP loans, and we are proactively reaching out to make sure that more people have access, specifically in LMI.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time today. Oh, Mr. Carter, you have one more comment?
30 seconds. I just wanted to clarify while the KeyBank team is on. I want to thank them for their presentation and engagement, but Mr. Zone talked about some of the initial targeting discussions we had for the Challenge Zone program. When the executive and I met, the initial thought was as a starting point that we might evaluate the opportunity zones, which there is overlap with the opportunity zone corridor, but we have 64 opportunity zones across the county. And because of the level of poverty that exists in those zones, that we're beginning to think about here in the department, how do we target resources and integrate it more completely? And so that was a starting point for the conversation, not a comprehensive ending point. So I just wanted to, we'd be guided obviously by the council's guidance in terms of geographic focus, but we thought in the moment as we were starting the conversation that was a good starting point since we've evaluated those. Again, they're across the county. They are weighted in Cleveland, obviously, for the obvious reasons. So I just wanted to clarify that for the record.
Well, it was just a concern to me simply because HRC, who I know well, they probably in their current footprint only have like 3 of the opportunity zones. There's a small
Yep.
one in Cleveland Heights. There's a small one, or is it 2 in East Cleveland?
There's none in East Cleveland, unfortunately. So
Okay.
yeah.
So that was why it didn't completely click for me.
Yep.
I know the size of I literally passed HRC's offices at least once a week.
Yep.
So they're on one of my drives they're in my district.
Yep.
So
So point well taken. I just want to make sure that
that's
the
it.
committee understood that this wasn't a Cleveland focus, that there was inner-ring suburb consideration. And again, we said we would come back with more data, but so we've gotten good feedback here. So thank you.
Council President, was there anything you wanted to say before we wrapped up with the Key Bank folks?
No, I think you've done an excellent job. And in fact, let me take this moment to just thank you, Cheryl, for your commitment, your hard work, your what expertise and skill you bring to this committee. I'm very glad to see you as chair, and we both share a passion for this, and I'm just glad to see things moving forward.
Thank you, sir. We have a few more minutes that Eric and Amanda and Chanel was blending 2 or 3 names together. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to meet with us. As you can tell, this is incredibly important to not only my colleagues and I on county council, but to a range of people across Cuyahoga County. Your performance as a lender is of importance. You are going to be who we deal with first, but not to worry. We will also be talking to your peer group, but some of your colleagues. I know that you believe that you are, what is it? The greater among equals, maybe. So we will be talking with you. We like to reserve the right, since it's the beginning of a consideration for baseball season, we reserve the right to call you back to play again. We'll want to have another conversation with you, hopefully in the spring after we've done some more homework ourselves. And we love the fact that you talked about what you have accomplished or what you're actually working on, because this committee is all about getting some real work done. But we need a few more minutes for those of you who only blocked out an hour. I know I need at least 5-10 more minutes with you. The folks from Key, you're welcome to stay. This is a public meeting, but we need to discuss our goals briefly and then our mission and then where we're going to go next. So thank you all for participating. But now I want to move on to committee goals. Our folks at Key were kind enough to in their presentation talk about our 3 committee goals. And then I have them on the agenda again. You see behind each of them where the votes were, so how they got onto the priority list. What I'd like to do is take a look at these 3 things. If this is as you remember it, that we had a priority on the challenge program, the mortgage loan program of under 50,000 and the loan application data process, then we can move quickly to talk about how we use those 3 goals to create a mission statement. Conversation, or you're not ready to at least create a draft mission so that we can, as we move forward, continually focus on why we want to have something as an outcome from this committee. Frank.
Okay, well, I was going to wait, but one thing I just want to repeat on this question of loans 50,000 or less, that we not narrowly think of it as only a problem when the $40,000 house doesn't appraise for 40,000, because you could have the house appraised for 40 and you still might have loan officers not induced to make the loan. And then you could have the issue of the fees. Now, I think they may have addressed those 2 things. I just want to reiterate that we as a committee, and at some point we might be talking to other banks, that we always think about the 50,000 or less issue as something not just narrowly based on whether the house appraises. That's the only one I thought I wanted to offer.
So I would like to, what, if you would be kind enough, Frank, over the next month to do 3 or 4 sentences about
Yeah.
how this should be, because what I'd like to do is have a kind of definition from our group perspective
Yeah.
on where we want to go with each of those 3 items, so that
Sure.
we can move toward when we say not only to Key, but one of my personal goals for all of you, since you all said yes to Pernell and I, to volunteer, is to use your activism to talk about how these 3 types of things can be adapted for whatever lender thinks they have profile in
Right.
Cuyahoga County.
And I think I've
So
already,
after we finish our dialogue with Key, we
Yeah.
may approach Huntington, we may approach Fifth Third. It'll be up to the collaborative to encourage me to bring whoever to this committee, to this table, so that we talk about all of them doing better. But
Right.
first, we'll use Key as the guinea pig, since they have the treasury agreement with the county.
Yeah. I'll get you some language. Thank you.
Okay. So for all of us, we all know that we work better when we have a mission that all of us can articulate. And so you see that B under my discussion and activities today is mission development, because I think that what we are trying to do here is to come up with a way to achieve an evaluable success in key areas of lending to increase home ownership, home values, and financial support across Cuyahoga County. I don't know that that is the actual mission statement, but that is what I think. Is that similar to what all of you think about what this committee is to achieve?
Madam Chair, could you repeat that, please?
Sure. It's, it's in bullets on my cheat sheet here. Achievable, we will hope to achieve evaluatable success in key areas of lending to increase home ownership, home values, and financial support across our county.
Madam
So
Chair,
that's just a start to think. That is
yeah,
not the answer.
this is Matt. Madam Chair, I'd suggest maybe you circulate that amongst the committee members and give us an opportunity to look at it and send back any suggested edits, and then give you and staff the opportunity to collectively capture all of our thoughts into one cohesive statement.
The staff will have that out to you soon. But is there any opposition to going with that kind of development, so that everyone who comes before us from here on out knows that you can talk to us, but we're always going to want to be able to evaluate what you do and see if you have really accomplished something. To Mayor Blackwell's point, don't just talk to us. This is not just another committee for people to sit at. When we're done in 8 to 12 months, we actually want to be able to say, this bank did these 5 things for us. This bank did these 10, and this bank only did 1. So, they may need some more community attention.
Perfect.
Thank you, Barbara.
Oh, I unmuted.
I did hear you.
Well, I do love the idea that any language that we use is broad enough to encompass all or any financial institution that we have already approached or that we will be approaching in the future. So I really want us to focus on not just KeyBank, but anyone that we would come into contact with. I'm sorry, I didn't know I had unmuted, but
that's okay. I think that when Pernell and I reached out to most of you, we talked about this not just being about Key, but using Key as the platform for how we moved forward.
Yes.
And the conversations might be shorter or longer, depending who the other lenders are. But that I think that is up to the committee after we finish the dialogue with Key. But doing some homework along the way, like what does the state of Ohio allow us to do as far as recommendations for changes to appraisals? And is there any room? Or are we going to end up being like lobbyists, having to go before the legislature in order to make to affect some changes. Do I see Mr. Carter's hand? Ted, is that you? You're on mute.
Just a clarification. I think I know the answer, but I just want to be clear on the direction that you all are heading, which we support. Is the engagement of the other banks relative to their standing as a civic business leader in the community, or is it related to a potential commercial relationship with the county?
Both.
Both, okay.
So before we go to the other lenders, we will talk with you, because my understanding is that 3 or 4 of the banks are also depositories with Cuyahoga County. So at any minute, we could choose to deposit some of our overnights, et cetera, with them. I mean, typically we are with Star Ohio with some of our largest investments. But we have small relationships with at least 3 more lenders. So I want to make sure that as we move forward and we have lending relationships with more than just Key, that we take a look at who those banks are and what they do or do not do in the footprint of this county. So it will take both sides of the table. It will take the administrator side. Ted, it will take you and Chris working with us to help us move this forward in a way that's palatable for both sides of the table. So that's the reason why you or having one of your staff present at each of our meetings is so important. Once we accomplish what we want to accomplish with Key, if we are to have meaningful dialogue with the other lenders who are have depository relationships with Cuyahoga County, it has to come from both sides. It has to come from the executives team, and it has to come from us.
Yep. No, I agree. And, after reviewing and talking with Mr. Ford on several occasions, I think we all agree that all of the banks can improve their lending position and the outcomes in the county. And I think the executive feels the same way, that this is consistent with our focus on equity. So the internal work that we're doing, as well as the partnership with the Citizens Council on equity. And so this is an important component, foundational in many ways.
So those of us who are practitioners in the field know that the net worth of African-American families is substantially lower than the net worth of white American families, simply because of the values and acquisitions and ownership patterns that are different. And if we are to affect those things, which go back to your racial equity conversation, it is to do things like this, because we will help one family at a time in reality by giving them the ability to own a home of their own, that it increases in value over time. And if I am an alkalite, a believer in any one thing, it is the value of home ownership and housing values in the average American's life. And so you will hear me preach from this seat, but for those of you who are practitioners in the field, I've been singing a version of this song or this piece of the Housing Bible my entire career. So hopefully all of us together can make an impactful difference in how home ownership, home values, and the values in our communities are affected through this committee. So I am thrilled that each of you are here every single time with comments. Do not hesitate to reach out to me individually. In fact, Mark, I will be dialing your cell phone number within 5 minutes of us getting off, because I had some ideas about enterprise. So that was why I wanted to make sure that you hadn't left your cell phone in some other part of the house. Anything else for today, folks?
Madam Chairman,
yes.
If I could, I just want to add to, first of all, and I support the statement you made. I just want to layer on for those who are interested, it's just not only net value of people's assets in their home. Right now, and it's only been exacerbated by the pandemic, we are living in a time where the income inequality gap is the greatest it's ever been since 1928, the year before the Great Depression. And when you look through the lens, a racial lens, the Black and brown population, they make significantly less than white households. So if anything that this exercise could do is really lift up communities of color and communities that have not had typical access to capital. So I support your statement, but I do want to underscore it's not only the value that one family holds, it's what the earning power of that family is. And there is a role for government to play to really help make this become a more level playing field for those who want to enter into the housing home ownership market. So I appreciate the county for inviting me and my colleague Frank Ford to serve on this committee, and I look forward to future meetings as we go forward. So thank you.
So as you can tell, I want this to be a robust dialogue. I want us to hit them hard. I do not want us to be afraid. We do need to be polite and respectful, but they need to understand that we're serious about this. So they need to bring their A game to this table and be prepared to show us their homework and give us detail, which I know Frank appreciates. If there are any other comments, now's the time to speak. If not, I look forward to seeing you this time next month. A portion of our conversation will be focused on appraisals and our mission statement, and anything else you want to tell me about along the way. Is there anything I forgot? Trevor, Joe, staff? Yeah, sometimes I forget, like I forgot the minutes. All right. Thanks, everyone. I will talk with all of you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much, Cheryl.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good evening.